Good morning. And first and foremost, I would like to acknowledge our very own TDSB students who are playing the beautiful music just now as we were all logging in and getting ready for today's event. What a beautiful, joyful, and caring way to start the learning of engagement. My name is Kayla Rudberg-Rotman, and I have been a parent of the TDSB for over 10 years with a son who is now in secondary school. I have been on the Parents and Caregivers as Partners Annual Conference Planning Committee for 6 years. My passion lives in supporting the positive mental health and well-being of students, parents, and caregivers in the TDSB. My parent and caregiver engagement has included being on my son's school councils for over 10 years. I've been actively involved with the TDSB Parents as Partners Mental Health and Well-Being Committee for 9 years. For the past year, I have been a member of my son's school's Caring and Safe Schools Committee. One of my favorite moments when working within this committee and engaging with parents and caregivers is when I can share an aha moment and make a difference in how someone feels about mental health and well-being in an optimistic way.
Good morning. My name is Zena Sherritt. I am a proud parent of the TDSB for the past 18 years and have 2 children attending schools in the TDSB. I have served on school councils in my children's schools. I'm a member of the TDSB Parents as Partners Mental Health Wellbeing Committee, part of the planning committee for this event today. I'm also a co-chair of PIAC, the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee. I want to thank all of you for joining us today.
And finally, my name is Felicia Cito-Lau. It's great to see so many new but also familiar faces joining us today. I'm also a parent of 2 TDSB students. I'm an alumnus PIAC co-chair. I'm an active school council member, and I'm just thrilled to be on the planning committee for this year's PCA Parents and Caregivers as partners. At this year's conference, I am very much looking forward to connecting and engaging with TDSB families online and finding my own joy to wellness and wholeness. Let's get right to it. We all will begin with the reading of the land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. I would like to introduce Elder Clayton Shirt to share a message of understanding to support our shared journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation. Elder Shirt is Plains Cree Anishinaabe, and he's originally from the Treaty 6 territory, Wolf Clan. Clayton is a traditional knowledge practitioner of holistic health and wellness. He's a lecturer, an educator, and a historian. His worldview and understanding of life is based on living his whole life immersed in learning from his traditional Indigenous teachers, elders, and family. He is currently the sitting traditional knowledge teacher educator with the Wakubanas Institute for Indigenous Health at the University of Toronto, where he is able to bring his traditional perspective and vast experience in walking the good path to scholars and educators. Also, being able to bring wise counsel and support to Indigenous students seeking higher learning. He was raised and currently lives in Toronto with his wife and family of 3 children and his beautiful granddaughter. I'd like to welcome Elder Shirt.
My good sister, thank you. I just want to say good morning to everyone. Good morning, my relatives. I'm going to do a traditional opening in this language. And also I've learned how to use Zoom over the last 5 years, so we've all come familiar with Zoom. And it's a little unorthodox because traditionally we'd be in person, but we've learned how to adapt, and that's one of the strengths of Indigenous communities, Indigenous people, First Peoples of this place called Turtle Island. We've always adapted, and we always will, and this is why we are still here. So with that, I just want to invite you all in a little bit of a glimpse of traditional ways of doing things in our way of life and our ceremonies. It's just a beginning. But first of all, I just want to say, before anything, before our race, before our gender, before our class, before our citizenship, before our age, etc., we acknowledge that we are the human beings before we're anything else. Nothing wrong with those things. It just comes secondary. And our ceremonies, simply very put, remind us of this. So whatever view you come with, maybe a religious view, an atheist view, an agnostic view, a spiritual view, we can all agree on this one thing, that we are the human beings. And my bone, your bone, our flesh, our blood, the liquids, minerals of the earth, the human. The being comes from our relationship, your relationship, the sun, sky, universe. We're the human beings. And so some beings came about 500 years ago to this place, and we told them this, and they just seemed to have forgotten this. And this is where all the trouble, I think, started. So we're trying to get back to that, and that's the truth. So we are on this journey called, we are healing ourselves again. We are relearning our cultures, our ways of life, and it was a beautiful way of life, because we taught our children that we are the people, and what a gift it is to be a human being. We are these magnificent beings, but we're also fragile beings. We are independent but dependent on each other. So an elder, a knowledge keeper, would gather us all in ceremony and speak and teach us, teach the young this, that there's nothing wrong with you. Creation itself does not make mistakes. And we are here to teach you and how to live a good life in relationship with the earth, the sun, sky, universe, with our mother, the earth. So in a nutshell, I've just talked about our culture, and I'm just going to share an opening prayer with all of you young ones out there, students. And I want to thank you for allowing me to do this. So I always start with our mother first, our first mother of all mothers, our mother, the earth. We give thanks to her. I give thanks to her. I pray to her. I say thank you for everything she provides for us, the people, to sustain this beautiful gift called life. She has provided, and you will always provide, and I am so grateful for this, to our first mother, the earth, for this beautiful gift and the medicines to sustain life. So with one mind, one heart to the people, we say miigwech to her, all my relations to her. I give thanks to Father Sky, that spirit world. I ask wherever you are, our ancestors to be with you, your ancestors to be with you, those kind, loving ancestors to be with you, to guide you, to give you the strength to keep going, to clear our minds, to open our hearts. We give thanks to our ancestors, those loving, kind ancestors, to be with you wherever you are. So with one mind, one heart, we say miigwech to them. We say thank you to them for always being with us and guiding us. We say all my relations to them. I give thanks to the sun, grandfather of all grandfathers, for giving the appearance of rising in that eastern doorway, for bringing a new day, for bringing the light, for bringing the warmth, for making the medicine grow to sustain this gift called life. We give thanks to grandfather sun for a new day, a new beginning. And if I have done anything wrong in the past, I have this day, I have this moment, this day to make it right, and I am grateful for this. I give thanks from my heart of hearts for a new day, a new beginning. So with one mind, one heart, I say all my relations to you. I give thanks to grandmother of all grandmothers, Grandma Moon. You are so beautiful in the night. I love you. I pray to you. I pray for you in gratitude for everything you provide for us and these young ones, the students, and our children and our babies. As they sleep, as we sleep, you do this for us. We acknowledge this. We come together as the people. You put the waters into order for us, the rivers, the lakes, the oceans. We acknowledge for water is life. We remember this in this moment, the gift of water, that life-given force. We love you, Grandma. I love you. I say thank you for all the things you do for us as our children sleep. You are so beautiful in the night. You bring light to the night. I love you from my heart of hearts. I pray to you. I pray for you in gratitude. So with one mind, one heart, I say all my relations to you, Grandma Moon. You are so beautiful. I offer my prayers to you, great mystery, creator of all creations, of all creation. Again, I just sit here humbly, say, for there is nothing beyond you. I say thank you for bringing us together. We come together to pray, give thanks to you for this gift called life. I ask for the blessings of our students here, all the ones and all the faiths, when we all come together someday in peace. I pray to you, great mystery, why we are here. I say thank you for the gift of life, from my heart of hearts. I say thank you for bringing us together and helping us. May we always remember why we are here, to work for the people. These young ones who have come here, we say thank you for bringing us together. Great mystery. All my relations. Miigwech, thank you for allowing me to say that simple prayer. Just a glimpse of our traditions, our way of life. I just want to say before it's not an old way, it's not a new way, it's a way of life. And we are relearning this again. We are healing ourselves again. I'm just going to quote one of our leaders who passed and who was a good friend of mine. He was a good friend of the families, and he's left a big void in our community. His name was Murray St. Clair, and he always reminded me, and he reminded the people that education has gotten us into this problem, and education will get us out when it comes to truth and reconciliation. And he reminded me this constantly. And my mother, who was here, who's the founder of Wandering Spirit Survival School, I'm not going to talk too much about her because it's only been 6 months and I'm still mourning her loss, and the community is mourning her loss. But my good friend Tracy's going to talk about her. So I just want to say thank you for allowing me to do this. And to you young people, keep going. Stay strong. Miigwech. Thank you.
Miigwech, Clay, my brother, Miigwech, for that beautiful opening. I just want to introduce myself. Good morning. So I'm going to introduce myself in my language. Ani Boju, Gabo Maingan Kwe, Nidishnakaz. I am Tracy McKenzie, and I'm one of 2 Indigenous community liaisons at the Urban Indigenous Education Center. I am from the territory of the Mississauga First Nation number 8 in Blind River, Ontario. I am Anishinaabe Kwe and a Mohawk. And I just want to say a couple of words about Elder Pauline Shirt. Elder Pauline Shirt, as Clay mentioned, has just passed May 7th of this year. Elder Pauline Shirt was not only the founder of our school, but she was a grandmother to so many people. And without Grandma Pauline, we wouldn't be where we are today at Wandering Spirit, as well as the Urban Indigenous Education Center. She was a leader, she was an advocate, very strong voice, and she led us in direction to where we are today in the Toronto District School Board. So I just want to say a big miigwech to Elder Pauline Shirt, who I call Grandma. So miigwech.
Thank you so much, Elder Shirt, for that enriching opening. And thank you to all of you here today for joining us at this year's Parents and Caregivers as Partners Conference. It's truly heartwarming to see so many engaged parents and caregivers from across the Toronto District School Board gathered here virtually together. This gathering represents our shared commitment to nurturing the joy and wellness of our children, regardless of which school across the city they attend. Your virtual presence today signifies your dedication to student achievement and well-being, and I have no doubt it will create ripples of positive change in their lives.
Good morning, Zena. You need to unmute.
My apologies. We have a full day of programming ahead, designed not only to educate and engage, but to inspire joy and sense of wholeness. You'll discover strategies and tools to support your child's well-being, hear from an uplifting keynote speaker, and connect with community agencies and fellow parents, guardians, and caregivers. We also want to ensure that those who couldn't join us can still be part of this vibrant conversation. Please share your insights and aha moments on social media using hashtag TDSB Parent Conf so we can collectively celebrate our learning journey and engage with one another throughout today's schedule. The conference is a collaboration planned by parents and caregivers, TDSB's community advisory committees in partnership with staff and the community. We hope you leave today feeling empowered with valuable insights to support your child's educational journey, enhancing both their wellness and your own. I am now honored and pleased to introduce the Chair of the Toronto District School Board. Please join me in welcoming Chair of the Board, Nithan Shan.
Thank you, Zena. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you all today. I want to first of all begin by thanking Elder Clayton Shirt for his presence today and opening this conference today in a beautiful way, in the right way that we begin this conference because of your words and because of your presence. Thank you, Elder, for welcoming all of us to this space and also reminding us all for our role in the field of education. As we start to have conversations about journey to joy, wellness, and wholeness, it is important to keep those remarks in mind throughout the day. And we had heard about the work Elder Pauline Shirt has done and the teachings and the guidance her and Marie Sinclair have given us as we explore this theme of journey to joy, wellness, and wholeness. And there's so much to be learned from, so much to be taken from their teachings and their lives that we have to incorporate into our work. So thank you very much for that opening. On behalf of all the trustees at Toronto District School Board, I know some of them are joining us today, and some will be, some are here, some are going to be joining throughout the session. So on behalf of all the trustees, I'm pleased to welcome all of you to the Parents as Partners conference today. The conference encapsulates TDSB's commitment to the values of collaboration, engagement, and shared mission. Our shared mission is to enhance the lives of all students throughout their education journey at the Toronto District School Board. As a school board that has close to 250,000 students in close to 600 different school settings, we have a huge task to make sure that those large numbers don't take us away from focusing on an individual child and their learning needs and their diversity of talents and expressions that they bring to the table. So our role as parent representatives and trustees, we have something that is very clear. We facilitate a strong connection between schools, parent, guardians, caregivers, and the community. And we are the bridge. We have to continue to remember that we are not where information stops or information comes from. We have to make sure that we are bridge and we let the flow of leadership come from the community to the board and from the board to the community. And so that function as a bridge is critical for many parent leaders and trustees, and I take that role very seriously. I have been a teacher, a youth worker, and I've played different roles within the school board as a trustee and so on, but I cannot emphasize the role of a parent is the most important role that I personally have felt as a parent of 2 children in the school system. When I come back home and talk to my kids, that's when everything hits home around what we are doing and what we are not doing, what we are missing, what we are doing well. And so as parents, guardians, caregivers, I want to thank you for your leadership, because that critical role is what drives us. That partnership is what drives us towards our success. So this year's theme is Journey to Joy, Wellness, and Wholeness. It resonates with the purpose as parents, trustees as well. Learning inside and outside our classroom should be a journey filled with joy, enthusiasm, curiosity, and wonder. I mentioned I was trained as a teacher, as a math and science teacher. I cannot emphasize enough that it's important for children to feel the joy when they come to learn. If they don't feel happy about being there, if they don't feel motivated, if they don't feel that they could be themselves and bring their authentic self to the classroom, no matter how great the teacher is pedagogically, it will not work in that child's favor in terms of well-being and achievement. So it's important for us to focus on these. It's not this or that. It is in fact complementary and in fact a precondition that is necessary for learning. So I hope that we take that in our mind as we discuss scores and we discuss statistics, that at the bottom of all those statistics is the most important thing, that the joy and wellness and the wholeness of students and their learning is prioritized. The conference provides an ideal platform for us to explore strategies, exchange ideas, and engage in meaningful discussion on how best to create safe, joyful, and engaging school environment where students can truly thrive. I want to finish off by thanking the reps, PIAC reps, and the committee that is organizing this conference. Thanks, Zinnia, Kayla, and Felicia. Thanks to all the PIAC reps who are taking your time from the family each and every time you volunteer to support other kids. You know, you are in it here today, not just to advocate for your children, but want to make it better for every child in the system. So thank you for your volunteerism, your commitment. Many of our schools are very functional today because of your involvement and participation to help others. So PIAC's voice is very critical to our board. The more we hear from you, the more we become reflective and responsive to the needs. So I'm hoping that we'll continue to strengthen the relationship between the board and the PIAC in the coming years. And I want to encourage all of you to engage fully today and share your lived experience. Let us work together to build a brighter, more joyful future for all students within TDSB as they navigate their time at the school board. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much, Chair Sean. Thank you so much for acknowledging the importance of parents as partners in the educational journey of our children and students. I am now pleased to welcome our Interim Director of Education, Stacy Zucker, to speak.
Thank you, Felicia, and welcome everyone. I can see that you have a very exciting day ahead of you, so I am very pleased for that. As the interim director, I'm also grateful to see families and school councils taking their time to be with us, so thank you. We know that engaged families create school communities and cultures that make our students feel that they belong, that they matter, and that they can achieve their full potential. I know each of you cares about partnering with your child's school so that they can provide the best possible learning environments and ensure that students know that they not only can dream big, but they can be supported in the pursuit of their dreams. Over the last year, we undertook the renewal of the multi-year strategic plan to better reflect the needs of our students, families, staff, and community partners, given the changes that we've experienced as a result of the pandemic and also trends in education. It was launched in April, and it is a blueprint for action. And the implementation process will provide many opportunities for everyone, including parent leaders, who are keen to find a way to engage in driving our priorities forward. I want to thank every parent, caregiver, and guardian for completing a survey or taking part in an engagement session to provide your input on the future of TDSB. Your input helped to ensure that the multi-year strategic plan not only names parents as parent engagement as a foundation to our plan, but also directly embeds the engagement in 3 of the 4 pillars. This demonstrates our commitment to ensuring that parental engagement is entrenched in every part of our work, and I look forward to your continued involvement in implementing the multi-year strategic plan. So thank you. Many of you will have seen updates about PPM 170. It's a ministry policy that sets direction for providing parents with information so that they're actively involved in their child's education. And across the system, we are working to update our communications by revising the parent concern protocol and ensuring all families receive the information that they require to effectively navigate their child's educational needs. You can look forward to updates throughout the year and encourage input as much as possible. As mentioned, this year's theme for the conference is one that it speaks deeply to all of us here because it builds a journey to joy, wellness, and wholeness. We know that students' well-being is the foundation for achievement and for leading rich, fulfilling lives. When we prioritize the health, including the mental health of our children, we allow them to thrive in all ways. I'm grateful to all of the parents, guardians, and caregivers who have taken the initiative to get involved in their school council and to take these leadership roles, allowing you to provide input into the students' education and provide support when we need to ensure our students can thrive. Again, I am a parent of 2 girls and was actively involved throughout my career. They're now in university, but it's still such an important part of being involved in their lives. So if you're not yet involved, I encourage you to engage with your local school council to ensure that your voices are heard. I specifically want to acknowledge all of the school councils and the families' collaboration with us as we changed our banking changeover throughout the year. In my associate director role, I support business services, and I know how much work went into that with the department, and I know that it was as smooth as it could possibly be because of your involvement. So thank you. I'm also pleased for the continued work of the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee in ensuring that councils have access to communication tools that are required to support your work. Our collaboration has resulted in a new council email tool, and we hope that it will further the important work of the councils. As a close, I want to thank the Planning Committee, composed of community advisory committees of the board, parents, guardians, and caregivers, as well as staff and all of today's presenters. We appreciate your time, your engagement, and your commitment to students. As we continue with our learning today, we are working for this generation and future generations throughout education. So thank you for your engagement and for your support. You are not just making your school and your community better for your child, but for children across the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Interim Director. Oops, sorry. Thank you, Interim Director, Education Zucker, for being here and providing a warm welcome back to parents, caregivers across our system.
Before we continue, we'd like to acknowledge that our original planned keynote speaker, Glenn Singleton, was unfortunately unable to join us today due to personal reasons. However, we are incredibly grateful that Sarah Rosensweet has graciously stepped in to support us and will be delivering our keynote address. Thank you so much, Sarah, for making this possible. It is now my pleasure and honor to welcome today's keynote speaker, Sarah Rosensweet. Sarah is a certified peaceful parenting coach, speaker, and educator, and the founder of Reimagine Peaceful Parenting. She lives in Toronto with her husband and her 17-year-old daughter. Her 20 and 23-year-old sons have launched. Peaceful Parenting is a non-punitive connection-based approach that uses firm limits with lots of empathy. Sarah works one-on-one virtually with parents, guardians, caregivers all over the world to help them go from frustrated and overwhelmed to we've got this. Please join me in welcoming Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to be talking to you today about, I'm going to share my slides in a minute, but I'm going to be talking to you today about peaceful parenting. But I really want you to keep in mind that peaceful parenting is a set of relationship tools. And at a time where things feel a little bit bleak in the world, it's really important to keep coming back to this connection-based approach. And everything that I'm going to be teaching you is not only that things you can use as parents or caregivers, but things you can use in your relationships with other people. I'm going to start sharing my slides in a second. If anyone, we're going to have a few minutes at the end for Q&A. If anyone has a question that something I've said doesn't make sense to you and you're like, what the heck are you talking about, Sarah? I hope one of the organizers can stop me and interrupt me if something's not clear that I'm sharing. So I'm going to dive into my slides. And I think you can see the slides here. So I'm just going to start. Okay, and as our host said, my name's Sarah Rosensweet, and my kids are 17, 20, and 23, all TDSB kids. My last child at home is currently in grade 12 in the TDSB, so it's really nice to be here. So we're going to be talking today about peaceful discipline. We're going to learn about why consequences don't work and what you should do instead. Just to give you a general overview of peaceful parenting and the lens through which we're looking at discipline, peaceful parenting is 3 big ideas. The first big idea is regulating our own emotions. That means we try to stay calm, not yell, etc. It doesn't mean that we never get upset because we're human. we're always going to, our kids will push our buttons, we'll have hard days. And what we do at that point is we do a repair with our child. But we really want to think about how can we try to stay calm when things are tough, because panic and upset are very contagious emotions. And if our child's upset and we're upset, there's nobody sailing the ship. And we really want to keep our thinking brain online so that we can be effective parents or caregivers. The second big idea is a focus on connection and our relationship with our child. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. And then the third big idea, which is where we're spending most of our time today, is talking about kind and collaborative limits with lots of empathy and no punishment. So I want to also address peaceful parenting. Since I started, as a parent and as a coach, it was a lot more unusual. Today, you see a lot of social media posts about gentle parenting, conscious parenting, respectful parenting, positive parenting. They're all very similar to each other, but there's also a lot of misinformation out there. So I just want to address something that I see a lot, which is, old school parenting is very adult centric, and the needs and preferences of the adults were above the needs and preferences of the child. One thing that I think a lot of people are getting wrong today about gentle parenting is that they think that gentle parenting is that we're flipping that hierarchy, and now the needs and preferences of the child are above the needs and preferences of the adult. And really what it is it's about teamwork and collaboration, right? It's not that we're, suddenly centering the child over ourselves. It's really like, how can we work together so that everybody's needs are met? Two mindset shifts that I really want you to keep in mind while we are talking about peaceful discipline. One is that kids are doing the best they can, right? They really do. Children want to be good. If they are acting out of alignment with our expectations of them or out of connection with us, it's because something else is going on. Evolutionarily, we rely on the connection with a caregiver to keep us alive. If somebody didn't love us, they would leave us, they would have left us on a rock when the floods came. So connection is really, we're hardwired for connection with a caregiver. And if we're acting out of alignment with that, it's because there's something else going on. There's like low on resources, tired, hungry, unmet needs, lots of things. So really keeping in mind that kids are doing the best they can. And the other thing I want you to keep in mind is that no one needs to feel bad to learn. We seem to accept that with adults. And, if we had a boss that was constantly yelling at us when we made mistakes, it wouldn't make us learn better. But we sometimes seem to forget that with children. So children do not need to be made to feel bad to learn. Those are two mindset shifts that are really important in peaceful parenting. So let's define our terms before we get started. You may have heard about natural consequences. They are different from consequences. A natural consequence is something that happens without any involvement from us. So if you throw your truck in anger and it breaks, the natural consequence is that your truck is broken. So natural consequence, if as a parent or caregiver, you find yourself thinking, what should the natural consequence be? You're not in natural consequence territory, because it doesn't need any involvement from us to happen. As opposed to a consequence, which is something that a parent might step in and do or threaten to do. It's also known as a punishment. People today, I think, are wary of using the word punishment because it sounds harsh. But if you say there's going to be a consequence for that, what you really mean is a punishment. So it's also could just be a threat, right? So something that you want to do to make a child do something, stop doing something, or to teach them a lesson. So that's what a consequence is different from a natural consequence. What we use in peaceful parenting is something we call limits. So a limit is something that you put in place to help your child meet your expectation. It never involves making anyone feel bad. That's not part of it. But it basically answers the question of how do I get them to do XYZ or stop doing ABC. That's what a limit is. And we're going to go into these in more detail. So let's just talk about natural consequences for a minute. Natural consequence, as I said, happens without any involvement from us. And it can be an amazing learning tool. So a natural consequence would be if you go outside, this little child is outside in the rain and they're getting wet because they don't have a raincoat or an umbrella. So the natural consequence of no raincoat or umbrella is that you get wet. The natural consequence of forgetting your lunch is that you're hungry. The natural consequence of not wearing a coat might be that you're cold. So those are all natural consequences, and they can be a very powerful learning tool. You might have a 3-year-old who insists on holding the helium balloon when you think it's a good idea to tie it on their wrist or tie it to the stroller, that helium balloon blows away, and you know, they have learned, oh gee, maybe it's a good idea next time to let my caregiver tie it to my stroller or to my wrist. So it can be a very, very powerful learning tool. The thing we really want to watch out for with natural consequences, though, is something that I call piling on. So I like to tell a story from, this was actually before I had children. We were at the cottage with my brother and sister-in-law and my nephew, who was probably around 6 or 7 at the time, and he was a big Pokemon card collector. And he had left his Pokemon cards outside, you know, in the nighttime, and it rained in the night, and his Pokemon cards got all wet. And he was devastated. You know, his whole collection was ruined. And, you know, his very well-meaning mother, I'm sure she just wanted him to really, she wanted to reinforce the lesson of you don't take care of your things and then they get wrecked. She said, you know, this is what happens when you leave your cards outside. He already knew that, right? He already had learned that lesson. Same thing if, you know, your helium balloon blows away and you say to your child, well, if you would have let me tie it on your wrist, this wouldn't have happened. This piling on is basically the sort of I told you so. And, you know, not only does it feel bad for the person who's just experienced the natural consequence, but it can actually, children can actually respond to the feeling, you know, feeling not supported and have a negative response to us when we're saying this, that when we're doing this piling on, and it can actually prevent them from getting the learning from the natural consequence. Because they can then, you know, my nephew focused his negative feelings about the Pokemon cards getting ruined onto his mother, who he didn't feel was supporting him. So we really need to watch out for piling on. What we want to do instead is empathy. So, oh my goodness, your helium balloon, it blew away. I'm so sorry. Or your Pokemon cards, oh, they're ruined. Oh, this is terrible, right? If we really truly think there's an information gap and our child doesn't understand why the helium balloon blew away or why the Pokemon cards got ruined, sure, we can step in and say, you know, what do you think we could do next time so this wouldn't happen, right? So we really want to watch out for piling on and natural consequences. We also want to watch out for not helping if you can. A lot of parents might, you know, say your child forgets their science fair project and calls you and says, I forgot my project, can you please bring it to school? You know, parents may have been told, you know, you know, don't, sorry, what's the word I'm thinking of? You don't want to rescue your child because they will never learn to be responsible. Well, if your partner forgot something important at home on the day of a big presentation and asked you to bring it to their office and you could, it would feel pretty awful if you said no, because I really want you to learn the lesson of forgetting your things at home. That said, if your child is constantly forgetting things, or your partner for that matter, you want to start thinking about what kind of systems can we use to help our child be more responsible and to remember things. But we really, you know, that if your child knows you're at home, could bring the science project, what that really would teach your child is my parent or caregiver could have helped me and has chosen not to. So that's another thing we want to watch out for natural consequences. We, you know, sometimes we do want to step in and prevent those from happening if it feels if we can, and it feels supportive to our child. And if it's something that, as I said, they're struggling with forgetfulness or disorganization, we really want to scaffold them and put some steps in place to help them solve that problem. So moving on to consequences, I have a blog post that I wrote that has about 10 reasons why consequences are not where we go in peaceful parenting. I'm just going to highlight a few of them here. And if you're interested in more of the research about consequences or punishment and rewards, I would refer you to the work of Alfie Kohn, who has written extensively about the research that backs up what I'm talking about today. Our culture really wants to believe in the behaviorist model that punishment and rewards work to change behavior. But what research shows over and over again is that punishment does not change behavior long term. It can change behavior in the short term, but it doesn't quote work. It doesn't change behavior in the long term. So there was a study with timeouts, and timeouts can be considered a consequence. It's love withdrawal, and what the study showed was that 2-year-olds who were given timeouts were worse behaved in a year than 2-year-olds who were not given timeouts. So the research shows over and over again that punishment just doesn't work. Even if it did, there are lots of reasons why I still think that we shouldn't use it. One of the main ones is that punishment hurts our relationship with our child. Remember how I was talking before about if you had a boss that yelled at you all the time, say you made a mistake at work and your boss yells at you in front of your coworkers, makes you stay late that night and docks your pay. How would you feel about that boss? I know I would start looking for a different job. So punishment really does, it hurts our relationship with our child. If they know that the person they love most is making them feel bad on purpose, then that is really going to chip away at the trust and the sense of respect, and that I call it the goodwill bank, right? It's going to really chip away at that. What I learned as a parent, this is my oldest son when he graduated from high school. He went to Etobicoke School of the Arts, shout out TDSB. What I really learned is that relationship is the only true influence we have over our children, or any relationship for that matter. When my son, the son in the picture, when he was around 16, he said, "Mom, you don't understand. So many of my friends ignore their parents' texts and calls, don't tell their parents where they are, and some of them don't even go home at night." And he said, a little disdainfully, he said, "You're really lucky that I care what you and dad think." And that really hit home for me, especially for teenagers, that caring what you think, or that connection, that relationship is really true influence. So punishment gets in the way of that. Another reason why we don't want to use punishment is it teaches a child the wrong lesson. So punishment teaches a child what's in it for me, right? So if you have a child who's hitting their sibling, and even if you could stop the hitting with a timeout or taking away their iPad or whatever, I would argue, and that might even be possible, but say you could stop the hitting with a consequence, that child has just learned, when I hit my brother, I feel pain, right? So the child learns, I don't want to hit my brother because I don't want to have anything bad happen to me. What we really want the child to think is, I don't want to hit my brother because I don't want him to hurt, right? I don't want my brother to feel bad. And, in a lot of ways, I think this is sort of the mess that we're in the world right now, is because people are often thinking more about themselves than they are about the results of their actions on other people. So punishment really teaches a child to think about themselves more than thinking about how their actions affect others. And we really want kids to do the right thing when no one's looking. And if the only thing that's keeping them doing the right thing is that they're afraid of getting a timeout or their, phone taken away, that is not going to be the effect that we want, right? We want kids who do the right thing because they have been, we have been guiding them all through their childhood about the right thing to do. And we are helping them along the way as these problems, mistakes come up. So punishment really, it's an extrinsic motivator to do the right thing rather than an intrinsic motivator. And finally, punishment doesn't address the root of the problem. So I mentioned before the siblings hitting. So if you have a sibling hitting the other sibling and you say, stop hitting your brother, or I'm going to take away your iPad, and they don't hit their brother, you still haven't solved the reason why they were hitting their brother. So why were they hitting their brother? Do they need some help? Do the siblings need help with conflict management? Is there some unaddressed sibling rivalry happening? Does the child, need some support that they're not getting? So, we can, it can be a Band-Aid, right? We can put a Band-Aid on it, stop the hitting possibly, but we've never addressed the root cause of the issue or the symptom. So just moving on, maybe you were raised with this more traditional approach and you think to yourself, yeah, I don't want to use yelling, threats, punishment for raising my children. However, if you just drop those tools out, you're still going to be stuck, because you can't just drop out a set of tools. You need to bring in a new set of tools, and that's where peaceful parenting comes in. So in peaceful parenting, well, in parenting in general, we all have expectations for our children, right? Expectations on their behavior, expectations of what they're going to do or what they're going to not do. And then sometimes we have the expectations on one side, and then we have the reality of the situation on the other side. And there's a gap in between our expectations and the reality of what's happening. And I call this the danger gap. So conventional parenting uses threats, bribes, punishment to close that gap, right? If you don't stop doing XYZ, I'm taking away your iPad. If you don't do XYZ, we're not going to the birthday party. So in peaceful parenting, what we use is limits. So limits are what close the gap. And I like to think of limits as the support or scaffolding, and educators here will be familiar with the term scaffolding. I learned all about that in Teachers College. The support or scaffolding that our child needs to meet our expectations. Oops, I think I missed a slide here. Oh, I guess I didn't. Okay, so, oh yes, before we set a limit, we really want to ask ourselves, this is not, peaceful parenting isn't just like we're going to be controlling and power tripping, but we're just going to be nicer about it. We really want to be flexible. And as I mentioned before, it's about teamwork and collaboration. So before we set a limit, we really want to ask ourselves, is it necessary, right? Is this a health or safety issue? Is it reasonable? Is it a reasonable limit that we're setting? Is it developmentally appropriate? And finally, is it worth it? So that, you see this messy room here, these two children playing in the messy room. Maybe you want them to clean up the room, right? So, you might ask yourself, is it necessary? I know when our kids were little, we had something that we called making the room beddable, which meant that there had to be a path from the bed to the door in case someone had to get up in the night. So it might not have been necessary to clean up the entire room, but we had to, for health or safety reasons, we had to make sure there was a path free of Lego, so that if a parent needed to go in the night or the kid needed to get up, they weren't going to hurt their feet stepping on the Lego. Is it reasonable? Maybe with using the example of clean rooms, especially for older children, I really had a policy of, it's your room. If you don't mind it messy, you're in charge of your room, and I'm just going to shut the door if I don't want to look at it. Or I had been known to, if it was important to me and not important to them, I'd been known to tidy up their room for them. There are limits you want to put on that. No food in the room and no wet towels on the floor. But other than that, maybe it's not reasonable to expect a child to keep their room clean. Is it developmentally appropriate? So maybe you set a limit, we are cleaning up this room today. Small children, or even, you might even be surprised the amount of executive function that it takes to tidy up a messy room. It might not be developmentally appropriate to expect that they can do this by themselves without support, right? And then finally, is it worth it? Sometimes as parents, especially with really busy lives, we might want to let things go, right? We might want to prioritize family connection over, family time or fun time over spending hours on a Saturday cleaning the room. This is a decision you get to make as a parent based on your values. And we also want to ask ourselves, when there's a lot of conflict over a limit that we might want to set, is that conflict worth it? So when we do decide, yes, we are going to get this room cleaned up, we want to think about what scaffolding or support does my child need to meet my expectation. And if you are used to using consequences, one thing you can ask yourself, usually what pops into mind if we're used to using consequences is, what consequences my child need to meet this expectation? So instead, if you can just flip that and just put in support instead. What support does my child need to meet this expectation, right? So support can be, so the scaffolding, the scaffolding is something that's used to hold up a building while it's being built, or in education, it's the support that a student needs to, while they're learning new skills. It's the same thing in parenting, right? So the scaffolding can be physical or it can be emotional. So what support or help does my child need to meet my expectation? Also known as, how do I get them to do X, Y, Z? So say it's bedtime. But two things I want you to remember here is that your agenda and your child's agenda are often in conflict with each other, right? Your agenda might be get your child to bed, and their agenda is stay up longer. That often happens in parenting, where we have opposing agendas with our child. And if we do decide that yes, this limit is necessary, I want you to remember empathy. So empathy is really easy. Empathy is easy if you agree. So it might be easy for you to empathize with your child if they didn't get an invitation to the birthday party, because you would also feel really sad and upset if you didn't get an invitation to the birthday party. But sometimes, especially with smaller children, the things they get upset about seem perplexing to us as adults. And so even if we don't agree, our first go-to response is always empathy. We might not agree, but it's not our job to decide what is a reasonable thing to be upset about. Our job is just to try as hard as we can to acknowledge our child's point of view and to try to see things from their point of view, right? Empathy is such a powerful relationship tool. You know, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of, you know, coming home from work and saying like, I had a bad day, I hate my boss. And your partner's like, oh, come on, you usually like your job and your boss is pretty nice. That may be true, but it's also not helpful. What you really want to hear is, oh, I'm so sorry that you had a bad day, right? So we always try to empathize when we're setting limits or just at any time when our child is upset. So what we want to think about when I mentioned the scaffolding is that, and the fact that we have the opposing agendas, is we really want to try and find a win-win solution. Some of the ways that we do this in peaceful parenting, and some of these, if you have older children, you know, some of these might not be as appropriate, but you know, we can always we can always adjust them as necessary for older children. Choices for an older child, for a younger child might look different. So for choices for a younger child, with this example of cleaning up the room, do you want to pick up the Lego or the stuffed animals? For an older child, the choice might be, you know, do you want to get your room sorted this morning or, you know, after dinner, right? So their choices are always a great first step. There are some kids who are more strong-willed. Like one of my kids, when he was little, I would give him choices and he would say, I don't like either of those options. He was very precocious. Another thing that we can do is to make it fun. So, you know, let's play a game. We're tidying up the room. Let's play a game. Let's throw the stuffed animals into the basket and see, you know, how many we can get in without missing. Well, let's put on some music. Let's making games of things. This is great for kids, you know, I don't know, I'd say through early grade school years. Often their agenda is that they want to play, and our agenda is that we want them to do something else. So if we can make what we want them to do playful, you know, play that one of my kids loved monkeys. So anything we could do to pretend he was a monkey or I was the mama monkey, he would do anything if you were playing monkeys. So anything that your child's interested in, any way that you can make it fun. And I know some of you might be thinking, oh, gee, Sarah, this sounds like it takes a lot of energy. It does take energy. It does take thoughtfulness. It does take creativity. However, fighting with your child, nagging them and fighting with them to do things also takes a lot of energy. So if you're using your energy to make it fun and make it playful, you're actually building connection at the same time. And we just talked about how connection is so important. And you're also, you know, creating habits where I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, but you're creating habits where their cooperation becomes the habit rather than conflict. Another thing that we like to do is called bridging the task. So after we get the room cleaned up, we're going to go to the park, right? Or we want to move them from, you know, after we get in the car, say they don't want to get in the car to go to school. When we get in the car, I have a yummy snack for you, or I will put on your favorite song. So bridging the task, offering help. Let's do it together. This is often great too for older kids. You know, older kids can feel as overwhelmed as younger kids sometimes with the things that they need to do, especially if they're tired. Executive function tends to go down. Inviting problem solving is another great way to get cooperation. So, oh my goodness, this room is so messy. What are we going to do? How can we solve this problem? And, you know, with an older child, it might be like, you know, we've got a problem with wet towels being left on the floor. How can I support you? What can we do to solve this problem? Right? So really working with kids to come up with a solution. And often kids will have great ideas. And what I found over the years is that sometimes they'll have ideas that you think won't work, but because they've come up with the ideas themselves, they often will work. They've got some buy-in, right? Because they've come up with the solution. And then finally connecting. If you forget everything I've said today, except for the power of connection, you know, when things are hard, empathize and connect. So, you know, you're trying to get your kid to put their pajamas on and you've been fighting and it's not a great night. Just, you can stop and say, we are both having such a hard time. I think we need a hug and a do-over. So really trying to connect when things are hard can actually get you a long way too. Next, we can just talk about more sort of, we talk more about limits in terms of support, and we talk more about limits in terms of setting limits. So how do I get them to stop doing ABC? So an example might be, when your kids are playing outside in the summer and one of them keeps squirting the other one with the hose when the other one clearly does not want to be squirted with the hose. So what I would recommend, first thing, remember our first step in peaceful parenting is to calm ourselves. I like to use stop, drop, and breathe. So stop, your kid's not listening to you. Stop what you're doing, drop your agenda just for a minute. You can come back to it in a second. In this case, it's not really an emergency. And just take a breath or do whatever you do that helps you calm yourself. So stop, drop, and breathe. First step, calm yourself. Ask yourself, is this in whatever the situation is this a necessary limit? Is it all the questions I asked you before? Is it necessary, reasonable, age appropriate, developmentally appropriate? Yes, it is in this case. You do want to stop one child from squirting the other with a hose when that child doesn't like it. So then we want to step in and lead with empathy. So leading with empathy is something that we always try to do in peaceful parenting. It's good practice for anyone in your life. So leading with empathy looks like, oh my goodness, you were having so much fun with that hose, right? Like acknowledging that child's point of view. And then we say at the same time, we try not to say but, because but erases the empathy that you've just said. So you are having so much fun with that hose. At the same time, your sibling has said no, and you need to listen to your sibling, which can really elicit a different response rather than just leading to the stop squirting your sibling with the hose, right? So when you're acknowledging somebody's point of view, they don't feel wrong, right? And then you often get a lot more listening, a lot more cooperation when you're leading with the empathy. And some kids actually are very easily shame prone. And if you skip the empathy step, they can go into a shame response where they feel like you're saying they're a bad person and that you don't love them. And that can actually lead to a lot of dysregulation and, and actually maybe making the problem worse. So we really want to try to see it from their point of view and lead with empathy. So if you don't, then at that point you might say, hey, you can squirt my feet, or you can squirt me, or you can water the flowers, or, you can ask your other sibling if they want to be squirted, right? So looking for that win-win solution, if possible. How can this child still have the fun of squirting something or someone else with the hose that they're enjoying doing? If the child is still not listening at that point, and so I say, if necessary, set the limit with calm and kindness. It could be that you need to turn off the hose, right? And which would be sad for the other children, but there is a consent thing, and you want everybody to stay safe and feel happy. So it could be that we get to this point, we've tried everything I've said, and you do need to say, you know what, we're going to turn the hose off for right now. We can try again later. It seems like you're having a really hard time listening when your sister is saying that she doesn't want to be squirted with the hose. So that's sort of what peaceful parenting limit setting looks like. One thing that I've had lots of people say is like, well, Sarah, isn't turning off the hose a consequence? So a consequence and a limit can look similar, but there are two things that we want to keep in mind. One is our tone. So if we're like, that's it, we're turning off the hose, we're done with water, right? If we're angry and dysregulated, it's going to feel like a punishment to our child. If our tone is kind and empathetic, it's not going to feel as bad, right? It's not going to feel like we're trying to make them feel bad. The other part that we want to look at of if it's a limit or a consequence is, what's our intent? Are we turning off the hose to make the child feel bad because they weren't listening when we wanted them to stop squirting their sibling? Or are we turning it off because that's what we need for safety and for the meeting our expectation? So really looking at what's our tone, what's our intent when we are setting that limit. One thing, oh yes, so I often also hear like, well, how will they learn? Don't I need to do something else? For some parents, just turning off the hose might feel insufficient. Like, he wasn't listening. I turned the hose off, but like, shouldn't I do something else? Like maybe like no TV for the rest of the day because he wasn't listening. What we want to really remember is that the limit is the lesson. You don't need to do anything else. The child has just learned, when I don't stop squirting my sibling with the hose, I don't get to play with the hose anymore, right? That's enough. The child is going to learn they're going to learn that through that setting of the limit, they're going to learn what the expectation is. The thing that in general, what we want to remember about peaceful parenting and about this kind of discipline, and discipline really means to teach, right? Like that is the root word of discipline, or I think it's maybe it's Greek, I'm not sure. But you think about the someone's disciples. It's the people who are learning from that leader, right? So discipline is really all about teaching and learning. When we support our child to meet our expectations, they're going to internalize the limit, right? When they choose to cooperate with us because we make it fun, they're internalizing our expectations. When they feel forced, they're not internalizing our expectations and they're not internalizing the limit. Your child might feel bad about a limit that you've set. You know, your child might be very upset that there's no more hose for the day. It's okay if your child's upset about a limit that you set. And remember when I talked about piling on, instead of piling on, we want to come up beside them with empathy. Empathy is really that, you know, so important. As I said, if you remember, forget everything else I said today, remember connecting and using empathy with your child. And it's okay if they're upset about a limit. There are going to be lots of things that your kids are upset about throughout their childhood. And, you know, one thing that comes to mind is, you know, I often think parents are upset. They don't want to limit things in their child's life. For example, screen time comes up a lot because their child gets upset about it. I do a radio call-in show every week, and almost every week we get a call about screen time. And I think we have to remember that we're in charge, even though we really want to have this the connected relationship with our child and have that goodwill bank and work together and be flexible. We still need to guide our children, right? They're immature, their brains are messy, they have poor impulse control. So we really do need to be strong leaders. And part of being a strong leader is being okay with upset sometimes if it happens. You know, if we've tried all of our peaceful parenting strategies and our child's still upset, that's okay. We can be a strong leader and be there for them and empathize with them. One thing to watch out for is that limits can sometimes be a punishment in disguise. Further to that, I also think sometimes we can, you know, one thing I see a lot now that peaceful parenting has gotten a lot more popular is that people think that peaceful parenting is just traditional parenting, but nicer. So we still want to think about being flexible, not being controlling. It's not that we're going to still get our way. We're just going to use empathy when we get our way. We still want to think about teamwork and collaboration. And also sometimes if we're dysregulated, I think I have time to tell a quick story. There was a parent I was working with who had a 4-year-old and a new baby. 4-year-old was quite sensitive, and this has really rocked this child's world, having this new baby. And the parent and the child had been having a lot of conflict since the baby was born. And the mother asked the child one morning, do you want some toast? Child ignored her. And the mother said again, do you want some toast? The child ignored her. And this had been actually something that had been happening. The child had been not answering her mother when her mother asked her questions, and it was really triggering the mother. And so her mother, I think after the 3rd time of the child not answering her, put the toaster away. And then of course, as soon as the toaster came out, as soon as the toaster went away, the child, but I did want toast. I did want toast. And the mother said, I'm sorry, I asked you, you said no. And, or you didn't answer me. So I put the toaster away. And I'm, you know, that this person came to a Facebook group that I moderated and wanted to know if she had done the right thing. And lots of other people said, oh yeah, you set the limit. It's okay. You set the limit, you used empathy. And then I went and asked her, well, you know, how are you feeling? First of all, could you have gotten the toaster back out and made toast? You know, if you're on your way out the door to school, you know, time's up. Sorry, we don't have time to make toast now. Okay, you can't get the toaster back out. So I asked this parent, could you have done it? And she said, yes. And she said, but I didn't want to do it because she wasn't answering me. And really this parent was acting out of her own dysregulation and anger at her child in quote, setting the limit of not getting the toaster back out, not because she actually couldn't do it, right? So, you know, of course it's annoying if your child is ignoring you. At the same time, this is a 4-year-old, we're the grown up. This 4-year-old is, you know, really brain very messy, not very well developed yet. And we can always choose kindness. And, you know, I think this parent saw like, oh yeah, I could have made the toast. I could have gotten it back out, but I was actually feeling angry at my child. And you know, if she was really honest with herself, she wanted her child to feel bad because she had ignored her mother when she was asking her. So we really want to just watch out that we're not setting a limit when it's actually a punishment in disguise. And we can move to questions if anyone has any questions, and if we have time for questions. I'm gonna stop my share.
Thank you, Sarah. We are running behind. The sessions, actually, our first sessions have already started. So those of us who, you're welcome to join the sessions, but know that the sessions are being recorded for future watching on YouTube. So thank you so much, Sarah, for that informative, inspirational keynote. Your words reminded us that, you know, embracing joy and resilience is within the reach for all of us. And I know many of us have taken valuable insights from your message. And I do have a few questions from the Q&A.
Okay, well, for that, I'm sorry to the interpreter for speaking so quickly. I didn't see your message until we just stopped right now.
Okay, sorry. So we do have we're going to take a few questions, even though we're running behind. So one of them definitely is a parent asks that they're not quite comfortable with the term used old school. You know, they were raised by a more traditional generation of parents, and they're finding that their generation with that traditional generation of parenting has more grit and perseverance than the current children's generation. Are there any adverse, challenging, top-down authoritarian situations in a family dynamic that could have positive influences on helping a child develop into more resilient adults?
Well, feel free to take what I've said, what's useful to this person, and throw the rest out if it doesn't resonate with you. But what the research does show, if you look up authoritative versus authoritarian parenting, psychologists have identified 3 styles of parenting: permissive, authoritarian, and authoritative. And if this person wants to just look that up, the research in peaceful parenting falls under authoritative parenting. And what the research shows is that authoritative parenting has better outcome for children. Like, it's not just my opinion; it's what the research shows. I'm not saying that that no good child has ever come out of authoritarian parenting, but what the research shows in general is that that's not the most effective way to raise a child for a good outcome.
Okay, and we'll take another question, but I want to let our listeners know that they can reach out to you via your peacefulparenting.com site, which that link is found on our parentsaspartners.ca site where our participants registered.
Yeah, it's
so
reimaginepeacefulparenting.com. Yeah,
sorry,
okay.
Reimagine Peace. The link can be found at our parentsaspartners.ca website. Also, so another question we have here, I think we've got to do one more. Just wondering, I think you touched on it a bit about what are natural consequences for screen time. There seems to be a question here from an educator about what's the best way to deal with students that are on screens and missing out, staying up late and then missing out on daytime activities because they're spending so much time on screens until the early
I think that's where a parental limit would come in. You know, it's our job, I think, to I don't know what the technology is, but I think there's ways to limit the Wi-Fi in your house. You know, children shouldn't have screens in their bedrooms at night. So I think the only natural consequence is that the child is tired and not able to engage during the day if they're up late on their screens. That's the natural consequence. And this is where I said sometimes as parents, we do want to step in and not let the natural consequence happen. And this is one of those times I think we want to, as parents or caregivers, set some boundaries around the screen time for our child, because they're not, you know, we have a hard time turning off our screens and getting enough sleep. And a kid it's really hard for them to do that.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to pass it on to Kayla. Thank you so much. Your teachings today have been a great reminder for all of us on our journeys as parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And I also truly mean when I say that your teaching to us was a gift to all of us. Before we transition to our first workshops, I just have a few housekeeping details. So please take a moment to explore the virtual event platform, which is your key to the agenda and the workshop links. If you encounter any issues, use the login information provided in your welcome email. For assistance, feel free to reach out to the contact to include in the email. We want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has contributed to the success of today's event. To all the workshop presenters, organizing committee members, vendor agencies, TDSB staff, trustees, volunteers, and each of you who have come to share in the experience. Thank you. As we prepare for our first workshop, I want to remind everyone that we have a support room available all day. And this room is staffed by our mental health professionals and is a safe place for anyone to go who might need a moment after a tough session or just want to talk to someone. If you're feeling overwhelmed or you need some support, please don't hesitate. Visit the support room by going back to the lobby. And last but not least, we will be closing the day with a fun Kahoot game. It's a great opportunity to test your knowledge from the sessions today, and you could even win some awesome prizes. So keep your pens and notebooks handy. Join us at 1:15 p.m. in the Kahoot room. I want to wish all of you a wonderful day filled with learning, connection, and joy. Have fun, and thank you for being here with us today.